Hey guys, tonight we begin not with a feast, a palace, or a legend, but with a marketplace. Not for olives, not for wine, but for people. It's ancient Rome, where the empire's wealth and power rested on the backs of men, women, and children bought and sold like livestock. The world is bustling, ruthless, and survival meant hoping you looked strong enough to be bought, but not so strong that the wrong master noticed you. Before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from, and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft, steady hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Congratulations. You've just stepped into a Roman slave market, and there's no going back. You arrive in Rome not with the swagger of a senator, not with the stern glare of a legionary, but with the quiet shuffle of someone who has absolutely no idea what they've just walked into. The air is thick with dust, smoke, and the faint tang of sweat mixed with olives. It's the sort of smell you could bottle and sell to no one. You might have imagined marble gleaming, clean temples, and noble philosophers stroking their beards under the sun. But instead you're standing in a marketplace that feels more like a cattle pen that's decided to dabble in human misery. And, lucky you, you're right in the middle of it. There are shouts in Latin flying over your head like arrows in battle. Some you catch: servus, pretium, venditur. Words that mean things are being bought and sold, though not amphorae or bread. Every so often you hear the word novus, which sounds exciting until you realize it just means new, as in a new arrival to the market. If this were a modern shopping mall, this is where the signs would scream "New stock just in!" Only the stock here can glare back at you. The people being sold are lined up in rows, standing on raised wooden platforms. They are stripped down so buyers can examine the goods, because heaven forbid someone purchase a person without checking the muscle definition first. Men, women, even children stand there, eyes glazed or darting. Some stiff with terror, others performing a kind of forced nonchalance. If you've ever had to endure being called up on stage at school to recite something you weren't ready for, magnify that humiliation by about 10,000 and you'll get close. Except here, instead of applause, there are pinches to arms, prying fingers, and a lot of very loud bargaining. The auctioneer, the mang, or slave dealer, is in his element. He's loud, gesturing with the enthusiasm of a street magician who's determined to convince you that this rabbit really did come out of that hat. He's got assistants who handle the merchandise, spinning people around like clay pots on display. Look at those shoulders! Fit for farm labor! Feel that back, strong as an ox. One man is slapped on the thigh to demonstrate strength. Another is made to run in place to show stamina. It's less an auction and more a grotesque talent show, with the prize being ownership. The buyers crowd close, some draped in expensive togas, others smelling faintly of goat and ambition. A few carry little wax tablets and styluses to jot down prices, because nothing says romantic outing like noting how much you're willing to spend on human life. Some buyers prod with fingers, others poke with canes, and one particularly enthusiastic fellow squints at someone's teeth like he's choosing a horse. There's laughter, jeers, bargaining in rapid fire Latin. If you thought modern haggling over a used car was awkward, imagine that but with lives, dignity, and freedom hanging in the balance. And here's the thing that slams into you with the force of a legionary's shield: this is normal. To them, it's just another day in Rome. Slaves are as common as clay lamps or loaves of bread. They cook, they clean, they tutor children, they build roads, they row ships. Rome runs on slaves the way modern cities run on Wi-Fi. Without them, the whole empire would sputter. To stand here and gape at it is like a Roman wandering into one of our supermarkets, staring at the rows of pre-packaged food, and muttering, "By Jupiter." They grow loaves of bread on trees. You edge closer, because that's what you do when you're both horrified and fascinated. The platform creaks under the weight of human bodies. A boy no older than 12 is shoved forward. His hair is combed neatly, probably by someone who thought it might bump up the price. The dealer announces him as pure Gracchus, a Greek boy. The crowd perks up, Greek slaves are prized. Often educated, sometimes multilingual. This boy isn't just a farmhand in waiting, he's potential. You can feel the buyers lean forward, like wolves sniffing at a lamb that might also sing poetry. You can almost hear the boy's heart pounding, though maybe it's just your own. His eyes dart to the crowd, searching for something. Pity, safety, a miracle. He won't find any. The bidding starts fast, the numbers climbing higher, shouted over one another. Someone raises a hand, another slams a staff on the ground, and the price leaps like a spark in dry grass. The boy doesn't move, doesn't flinch. He's been told to stand still, like merchandise, like marble. And he does. If you were hoping for someone to object, for a sudden heroic, "This is wrong," moment, you'll be disappointed. Rome doesn't think it's wrong. It thinks it's Tuesday. And as the auctioneer claps his hands, sealing the sale, you realize you're standing in a world where freedom isn't assumed. It's a luxury, a fragile thing. The kind of thing you don't know you miss until it's yanked away. Someone nearby chuckles at your expression. A local. He sees you gawking like a tourist and shakes his head. First time, he asks in Latin, though you understand enough. His grin is wide, teeth yellow, eyes amused. You nod. He shrugs like he's seen it all before. To him you are the strange one, shocked that bread costs money and water is wet. He pats your shoulder with the air of a man comforting, someone who's just discovered olives have pits inside. You want to tell him this is barbaric, but the word barbaric itself is Roman, originally meant to mock anyone who wasn't them, and they don't apply it inward. To them this isn't cruelty, it's economy. Rome has turned people into currency, and you're standing in the exchange. The crowd shifts, and suddenly you're pushed toward another platform. Here the slaves are older, tougher, their backs corded with muscle, their faces weathered by sun. These are laborers, men for the fields or the mines. The kind of work that grinds a body down like millstones on grain. The auctioneer doesn't bother with charm here. He slaps shoulders, flexes arms, barks prices. Buyers grunt approval or scowl. It's faster, harsher, as though no one has time for niceties when you're essentially buying endurance. One man is made to lift a sack of stones in front of everyone. He does, veins standing out in his arms like rope, jaw tight. The crowd murmurs. He's strong. Valuable. You watch the price climb, and all the while the man's eyes are fixed somewhere in the distance, as if he's already far away, already gone. Maybe he is. It's hot, the sun hammering down, sweat sticking your tunic to your back. You wipe your forehead and realize the people being sold can't. They have to stand still, sweat beading and rolling, stinging their eyes, tickling their necks, and they can't lift a hand. It's part of the display. It's part of the humiliation. If you think waiting in line at the DMV is bad, imagine waiting for hours, half naked, while strangers argue over your price. A commotion breaks out nearby. A woman is brought forward, her hair braided neatly, her face pale beneath the sun. She is tall, striking, and the auctioneer plays it up, clapping his hands, shouting her virtues. "Beautiful, strong, good for the household!" He twirls her, shows off her figure, and the crowd buzzes. Some men lean forward, hungry-eyed. Others calculate quietly, weighing her value as a maid, a concubine, a nurse. She stands stiff, chin-high, eyes straight ahead. If she's afraid, she's not showing it. It's dignity in the face of indignity, and it makes her seem all the more unbroken. The bidding starts, fast and eager. Hands shoot up, voices clash. One man in a purple, edged toga sneers at another, raises the price by a ridiculous sum just to spite him. The crowd laughs, the auctioneer beams, and the woman stands like marble, enduring. Somewhere deep inside, you want her to spit in someone's face, to lash out, to remind them she is not theirs. But she doesn't. She can't. Rome has swallowed her voice before she's spoken. And then you realize something strange. You've been here long enough that the horror is already dulling. Your shock is still there, but it's quieter now, numbed by repetition. The cries, the bargains, the clapping hands, it's background noise, like a marketplace selling fruit. And maybe that's the most chilling part of all. You are adjusting. Slowly, unwillingly, you are learning to see this the way they do. As normal. But of course, if you think this parade of buying and selling is unsettling, wait until you discover what happens after the sale, when the ink dries, and a life is taken home like a loaf of bread tucked under the arm. The hammer of the auctioneer. Well, it isn't really a hammer, more like a clap of his hands and a dramatic shout. Seals another sale. A young man, brawny, eyes lowered, is led off the stage by a rope tied loosely around his neck. The buyer, flushed with victory, looks as though he's just picked up a fine piece of furniture. You want to shout at him, "That's a person, not a dining chair!" But here, in the belly of Rome, that distinction is a luxury of philosophy, not of law. You trail after the buyer without meaning to, swept along by the crowd, and suddenly you find yourself in the narrow space where transactions are completed. The slaves are handed over, contracts scribbled onto wax tablets, money exchanged with a jingle of coins, Roman denarii flash in the sun. Little silver discs stamped with the heads of emperors, who are very far away from this sweaty marketplace. Freedom is weighed out in coin purses, and the balance is never in favor of the person being sold. One man, newly purchased, stumbles as he's dragged away. His buyer jerks the rope, curses, and the slave straightens instantly, fear sharpening him like a blade. If you've ever tripped in public and felt the sting of embarrassment, multiply it by terror and you'll get close. Here, a stumble isn't funny, it's dangerous. A stumble could mean punishment or worse. Rome is not big on sympathy. You pause at another platform where the merchandise is less shiny. Here stand the rejects, the damaged goods. Men with scars, women with missing teeth. Older slaves whose backs stoop from years of labor. Their prices are low, their buyers fewer. They are prodded and dismissed with quick shakes of the head. The auctioneer tries half-heartedly to sell them, but the crowd has already drifted away, sniffing for fresher meat. These people, once valuable, are now burdens. Rome's cruelty has an expiration date, and when it passes, it is merciless. A buyer finally takes one of the older men, paying a pittance. And you see in his eyes the calculation. He'll squeeze what little labor remains, until there's nothing left. The man shuffles off, shoulders bowed, and you feel the weight of something you can't name. It's not just pity. It's the sickening realization that Rome, the empire of roads and aqueducts and marble temples, builds its greatness on the slow grinding away of human lives. And yet, absurdly, you catch yourself thinking of something modern: discount aisles in supermarkets. The bruised fruit, the dented cans, sold cheap because no one else wants them. You shake the thought off quickly, horrified at yourself. But isn't that the point? Rome has turned people into commodities so completely that even your mind, trained centuries later, slips into the same grooves. The sun climbs higher. The crowd grows restless. The auctioneer senses it and brings out something special. A girl is led onto the platform, perhaps 15 or 16, her hair braided into glossy coils, her tunic clean and bright. The crowd hushes, murmurs ripple. She is young, she is beautiful, and in Rome, that means her price will climb to the heavens. The auctioneer paces like a proud chef, revealing his masterpiece. He extols her virtues, youth, beauty, potential. Buyers step closer, eyes gleaming, voices low. The air feels thick, charged, ugly. You want to look away, but you can't. You're staring at the theater of it, the grotesque performance where her body is currency. A man in fine robes bids high immediately, trying to scare off competition. Another, plainer, but determined, counters. The auctioneer plays them against each other, raising the tension, stoking the fire. The girl stands frozen, a statue carved from fear. And then it happens. The price soars, a ridiculous sum shouted above the noise, and the auctioneer slams his hands together with glee. Sold. The crowd erupts in chatter. The girl is led away, her buyer smug, the others muttering. You feel sick, and you realize something else. For every sale you've seen, there are a dozen more happening across Rome, every day without pause. This is not an event. This is a machine. The crowd begins to thin. The auctioneer wipes his brow, pockets heavy with coins, voice ragged but still sharp. Assistants begin sweeping the platforms, herding the last of the slaves into pens like cattle. Buyers drift away, some satisfied, others disappointed. But all carrying the weight of new property. You linger, unwilling to leave just yet, because something inside you insists you haven't seen the full picture. And you haven't. Because behind the platforms lies a quieter corner, where slaves are kept before their turn comes. You slip past a distracted guard and find yourself in the holding pens. It is dim here, shaded by canvas, the air thick with the smell of unwashed bodies, straw, and fear. Men and women crouch together, chained lightly but closely watched. Some whisper to each other, others sit in silence, eyes hollow. A young woman rocks back and forth, murmuring in Greek. A man with a scarred face stares at you, unblinking, his expression unreadable. A boy curls against his mother, thumb in his mouth, eyes wide. These are the moments the auction doesn't show. The waiting, the dread, the quiet collapse before the performance. You feel like an intruder, and maybe you are. Their eyes follow you not with hope, but with wary acceptance. They don't expect rescue. They expect the clap of hands, the tug of the rope, the end of waiting. You step back, shaken, and nearly collide with an overseer who eyes you suspiciously. You mutter something about being lost, and he snorts, waving you off. As you stumble back into the sunlight, the noise of the marketplace rushes over you again, like surf drowning thought. The normalcy of it is unbearable. And then, as you prepare to leave, you hear laughter. A group of boys chase each other through the market, kicking a leather ball, shouting in Latin. Their joy rings out, clear and bright, cutting through the gloom. For a moment, it almost feels normal. Children at play, merchants shouting, sun on stone. You could almost forget what you've seen, almost. But then one of the boys collides with a slave, a man carrying a heavy jar. The jar crashes, shattering, oil spilling across the stones. The man falls to his knees, face pale. The overseer is on him in an instant, whip cracking, curses flying. The children scatter, laughing nervously, and the man cries out as the lash falls. The laughter and the screams mix in the hot air, and suddenly you know. You cannot forget. Rome won't let you. You step away, your feet dragging, your stomach tight. You tell yourself you've seen enough, that you'll never set foot in a slave market again. But you also know this city has more shadows waiting for you, more corners where the human cost of empire is hidden. And if you think the auction block was disturbing, wait until you see what happens in the households where these new purchases are brought, dressed, trained, and broken to fit their master's will. You're not given time to catch your breath. The market fades behind you, its echoes of shouting and clapping hands still clinging to your ears. But the rope around the slave's neck is tugged forward, and with it, you two are drawn deeper into the Roman city. The buyer struts ahead, the swagger of a man who's just added a fine new lamp to his collection, except the lamp happens to be breathing. His toga drags dust from the street, his sandals slap against stone, and his slaves trail behind like shadows bound to his heels. The streets themselves are alive. Vendors call out from stalls, waving figs and honey cakes, the smell of grilled fish curling through the air. Donkeys bray, carts rattle over uneven stones, and somewhere a dog barks like it's auditioning to guard the Colosseum. Above it all, the August sun presses down, heavy and merciless. You find yourself sweating in sympathy for the man beside you. The newly purchased slave, his tunic thin, his skin already slick. He doesn't look at you. He doesn't look at anything. His eyes are fixed somewhere on the ground, because looking up means remembering there's a world beyond his rope, and remembering hurts. You weave through the crowd and notice how easily people step aside for your new master. It's not respect, it's habit. Romans know to avoid brushing against a wealthy man's property. And just like that, the slave isn't just a man anymore. He's a possession, and the crowd treats him like one. You could replace him with a mule or a bundle of firewood, and no one would blink. That's how seamless the cruelty is. How ordinary. A thought strikes you, absurd and sharp. This is the ancient version of walking home with your new flat, pack furniture from IKEA. Except instead of assembling a chair, you're going to unassemble someone's life. Rome has perfected the art of convenience, at the expense of conscience. The master's domus looms ahead, its entrance framed by tall wooden doors painted red. The walls are plain outside. Romans like to keep their wealth tucked behind walls, safe from thieves and gossip. But inside, when the door creaks open, you're hit with a blast of cool air and color. The atrium stretches out before you, its marble floor slick with polish, a pool of water catching sunlight in the center. Frescoes splash the walls in red, blue, and gold, scenes of gods lounging and mortals bowing. The place smells faintly of incense and wax. You can almost hear the house whisper here, wealth lives. The new slave is tugged inside, the rope finally removed, though his wrists are still bound. Other slaves appear, gliding silently, their tunics plain, their eyes lowered. They move like clockwork, each knowing their place, each orbiting the master like planets around a sun they can never touch. They take the rope, lead the newcomer away without a word, and he follows, because what else is there to do? You wander in after them, invisible but present, the curious ghost of a time traveler with no skin in the game, but a stomach full of unease. The corridors are narrow, the floors swept, the walls lined with painted panels. You pass a dining room, where couches are arranged for reclining feasts. A lararium where little household gods sit watching with clay eyes. And a kitchen where the smell of baking bread tempts you with cruel precision. A slave woman tends the oven, sweat shining on her face, hands moving without pause. She doesn't look up either. They rarely do. The newcomer is taken to a small room at the back of the house. It isn't much, a space barely big enough for a pallet stuffed with straw and a jug of water in the corner. The walls are bare, the air stuffy. This will be his home, though. Home feels too generous. It's a holding cell with softer edges, a place to collapse between commands. He sits on the pallet, eyes darting briefly around the space before falling again to the floor. He's not asking questions. He knows better. From down the corridor comes the sound of laughter, the master's children playing. Their voices are high, carefree, ringing with joy. They shout for a toy, demand honey cakes, squabble, then laugh again. For a strange, dizzying moment, you realize those same children might one day order this new slave to fetch water or carry them on his back. Children wielding power over adults, because Rome has shuffled the deck of life and dealt its cards with cruelty. And here comes the modern whisper in your head. Imagine your boss's toddler deciding your workload. Rome doesn't just blur the lines of authority, it redraws them in absurd shapes, until the logic makes sense only if you accept it blindly. Later the master summons his new purchase. The atrium gleams in torchlight now, the sun gone. The household quieter but still alive with activity. The master sits on a chair with curved legs, carved wood gleaming. He looks over the slave the way you might inspect a horse you've just bought. He asks questions. Name, origin, skills. The slave answers softly, in Latin broken by his native tongue. The master frowns at some answers, nods at others. A servant stands by, jotting notes on a wax tablet. This is not conversation. This is inventory. The master claps his hands once. Tomorrow, he says, you begin in the fields. His tone is final, casual, as if assigning someone to fetch more wine. The slave bows his head. He does not beg, he does not protest. Perhaps he knows it would be useless. Perhaps he has already folded his soul into a smaller shape to fit the life ahead. You stand in the corner, invisible, listening to the waxy scrape of stylus against tablet, the flicker of torches, the slow crushing of a man's freedom beneath the weight of routine. You wonder how long it takes for a human being to stop hoping. Days? Years? Rome seems built to test that question over and over again. And if you think this household is grim, wait until you see the fields themselves, where the empire's appetite for grain grinds men into dust under a sky that never cares. Morning in Rome doesn't so much dawn as it barges in, uninvited and loud. The streets outside the Domus stir with carts and shouts. Roosters crow with an enthusiasm that makes you wonder if they're auditioning for something, and the first rays of sunlight creep through cracks in shutters. For the household slaves, though, morning isn't an awakening. It's a command. Before the master even stretches under his blanket, they are already moving, sweeping, fetching water, kneading dough. The new slave is shaken awake by a fellow servant, a man older, wary, with the expression of someone who's learned that hope is a luxury best left at the door. He gestures sharply, no wasted words. The newcomer rubs his eyes, sits up from his straw pallet, and is handed a chunk of bread so hard it could be used as construction material. Breakfast, Roman style, for those who serve. The walk to the fields is long. You leave the cool shade of the Domus behind, stepping into streets that reek of dung and smoke. The slaves are herded together, a small group under the watchful eyes of an overseer carrying a whip that seems to waggle with excitement. You pass bakeries with their ovens roaring, shops already clattering open, vendors hawking grapes and figs. The free citizens stretch and yawn, muttering greetings to neighbors. They glance at the slaves in passing, some with indifference, others with curiosity, but no one with pity. To them, this line of weary figures is no more remarkable than the morning delivery of grain sacks. The fields stretch wide under the rising sun, golden stalks bending in the breeze, the hum of insects thick in the air. It looks almost peaceful until you see the men already at work, backs bent, scythes flashing, sweat pouring. The overseer cracks his whip, not on flesh, not yet, but in the air, the sound sharp enough to cut the morning. The slaves flinch anyway, muscle memory twitching faster than thought. The new slave is handed a tool, a heavy iron hoe, rough in the grip. The overseer points, a simple gesture that means, dig, and so he does. Soil turns, roots break, sweat beads on his forehead. The rhythm is punishing, the pace relentless. There are no pauses for admiration of the view, no contemplative sighs under the Roman sun. Just the grind of iron in earth, the ache spreading through arms and back. The older slave beside him works with mechanical precision, his body moving like a wheel that has turned too many times to falter now. He doesn't speak much, but when he does, his words are clipped, efficient. Don't stop. Don't slow. Just breathe. Advice not for life, but for survival. By midday, the heat is a beast crouched on everyone's shoulders. Tunics cling with sweat. The soil burns the soles of feet through worn sandals, and the air tastes of dust. A break is called, not from mercy but from necessity. The slaves slump under the meager shade of an olive tree, gnawing at bread and sipping water that tastes faintly of leather from the skins it's carried in. The overseer paces nearby, whip dangling like a threat made flesh. It's then you notice the silence, not the absence of sound. Rome is never silent, but the way the slaves eat without chatter, eyes lowered, bodies angled away from one another. No one lingers on names, on stories, on the past. Perhaps it's a kind of self-defense. If you don't know the man beside you, you don't mourn him when he collapses in the field. And still your mind, stubborn and modern, sneaks in comparisons. You think of office lunch breaks, the casual gossip, the trading of sandwiches and complaints. Imagine that same lunchroom, except no one speaks, and the boss patrols with a whip instead of passive-aggressive emails. It would be funny if it weren't so horribly real here. The break ends too soon, and the grind resumes. The sun begins its slow slide, shadows lengthen, and the slaves' movements turn sluggish. The overseer notices, of course. He always notices. A lash cracks across someone's back, sharp and sudden. A sound that makes your teeth ache. The man grunts but doesn't stop working. He can't. Rome's fields don't care about pain, only output. At last, when the sky burns orange and purple, the overseer calls an end. Tools are stacked, shoulders sag, and the slaves shuffle back toward the domus. Their bodies ache, but the rhythm of obedience carries them forward. You walk with them, your feet dragging though you haven't lifted a hoe all day. Somehow, the weight of their exhaustion clings to you like a second skin. Back at the house, the slaves disperse to their duties. Some light lamps, others prepare the evening meal. The new slave is handed a jug, ordered to fetch water from the cistern. His hands tremble as he lifts it, arms sore from the day's labor. No one spares him sympathy. To falter is to invite punishment, and punishment is entertainment for the overseers. As the household dines, reclining in the triclinium, voices bright with laughter and wine, the slaves hover like shadows. They pour, they serve, they clean. The new slave stands in the corner, waiting, ready, invisible. He is everywhere and nowhere. The silent machinery of luxury. The children demand more honey cakes. The master tells a story, exaggerated, drawing laughter from his guests. The new slave keeps his eyes low, his ears open. To him, every word is a reminder you are here to make this possible. Later, when the family drifts into sleep, and the lamps burn low, the slaves return to their quarters. The new one collapses onto his straw pallet, muscles trembling, breath ragged. He doesn't speak, he doesn't need to. Exhaustion is the only language left. You watch him fade into restless sleep, and you realize you've witnessed the transformation. Yesterday he was a man in a market, a name, a story. Today he is function. Tomorrow he will be habit. And the day after that he will be Rome's property as surely as the marble under its temples. And if you think the fields and the household grind are suffocating, wait until you see the mines, where daylight disappears and men dig in darkness, so deep it swallows even their screams. The ground shakes with the clang of iron on stone, the groan of straining bodies, and the occasional, chilling crack of a whip echoing through the tunnels. If the fields of Rome demanded sweat, the mines demanded blood, and they usually got it. You step into this world, and the air hits you first, thick with dust so fine it clings to your lungs like a guest who refuses to leave. 1 breath, 2 breaths, and you're already coughing. Congratulations, you've entered the mines. Welcome to your new respiratory disease. It's not glamorous, and nobody writes poetry about this place. Virgil sings of heroes and wars, Ovid whispers of love and transformations, but the miners. They're the forgotten verses, the stanzas Rome didn't think worth saving. To get here, most men have already lost something. Their freedom, their health, their hope. Slaves too disobedient for the household, too weak for the fields, or simply unlucky enough to be purchased for this specific purpose end up here. And once you go underground, the odds of coming back up alive are about as good as your chances of getting a clean seat on a modern subway during rush hour. The shafts plunge deep into the earth, supported by wooden beams that creak like old bones. The light of oil lamps flickers weakly, more suggestion than illumination, casting shadows that dance along jagged walls. Pickaxes swing, sparks fly, stones fall. The men move in a rhythm that isn't work so much as punishment made routine. Their bodies are gaunt, muscles straining, skin pale from lack of sun. Some wear rags, some wear nothing at all. Clothing, after all, is wasted on men who'll never live long enough to see it rot. And the noise. Gods, the noise. It's a constant metallic symphony, iron-biting rock. Overseers shouting, miners groaning. It fills your head, burrows in, and refuses to leave. You wonder how anyone could think in here, but then you realize, thinking isn't required, only swinging. Only breaking. Only digging. The slaves chip away at veins of silver, gold, and copper. Treasures that will adorn temples, pay soldiers, and fund festivals. Rome's glittering wealth, its shimmering facades, its endless feasts. They all bleed from this darkness. Every coin clinked in a senator's pouch is an echo of iron on stone, of a man coughing his lungs into the dust. You'll never look at a denarius the same way again. The overseer, stationed near the entrance where the air is almost breathable, cracks his whip lazily. He doesn't even need to strike anymore. The threat is enough, the memory fresh in every scar across every back. One man stumbles, his pickaxe clattering to the ground, and before he can straighten, the lash sings across his shoulders. The man hisses through his teeth, but keeps digging. There is no rebellion here, only survival measured in hours. The tunnels are narrow, crawling with men forced to squeeze, bend, contort just to reach the rock face. In places, the ceiling is so low you must hunch like an animal. The stone pressing down as if the mountain itself is reminding you who's master. The lamps sputter, smoke curling upward, filling the air with a choking haze. Some miners faint, collapsing where they stand. Others don't even bother to notice. They just step over the bodies, because stopping means punishment, and punishment is worse than compassion. Water trickles down walls, mixing with dust to form a gritty paste that cakes the skin, hair, and lungs. Rats scuttle freely, living their best lives, gorging on scraps and corpses alike. You almost envy them. At least they're free. And let's pause here, because if you've ever complained about the Wi-Fi dropping during a Zoom meeting, you should take a moment to appreciate that at least your office doesn't double as a death trap filled with collapsing stone, suffocating dust, and rodent roommates. Perspective is everything. Back deeper, where the shafts twist into near total darkness, the real horror waits. Slaves are chained in place, condemned to dig without ever seeing the sun again. Some are children, small enough to crawl through spaces grown men can't. Their hands are raw, their eyes wide in the flicker of lamplight. They were bought for their size, not their strength, and their youth is spent in the belly of the earth. Rome calls it efficiency. You might call it monstrous. The air grows hotter the further down you go, the walls sweating moisture, the stone radiating heat. Breathing becomes labor. Some men choke, spit blood, and keep digging anyway. There's nowhere else to go. You can almost hear the mountain laughing at them. Every so often, there's a rumble, a tremor, and everyone freezes. A collapse is always possible, always waiting. The silence in that instant is deafening. Every man listening, holding his breath, praying to whatever gods still bother to listen to slaves. Sometimes the mountain holds, sometimes it doesn't. When the ceiling comes down, it comes without warning, crushing men like ants, burying their cries under tons of stone. No rescue follows. Just the overseer counting how many more slaves need to be purchased. And yet, even here, there are moments of bleak humor. A man mutters under his breath about how he misses the fields, of all places. Another jokes, darkly, that at least the mines save him from the master's wife's wandering hands. You laugh because the alternative is madness, and madness, here, is contagious. You catch yourself noticing little details, the way the sweat carves clean streaks down dirt, stained faces, the way a pickaxe's rhythm sounds almost like a heartbeat, the way the dust glows when caught in lamplight. Beauty, even in hell. It's strange what the mind clings to. When the day finally ends, if you can call it day in a place where sunlight never enters, the slaves are herded out, coughing, staggering, their bodies coated in grime. Some don't make it to the surface. They're left where they fall, claimed by the mine that has already claimed so many before them. Above ground, the overseers tally the ore, the precious metals hauled from the earth by human misery. They joke, they eat, they drink. The slaves collapse into sleep, lungs rattling, muscles screaming. Tomorrow it begins again. Tomorrow the earth will drink more sweat, more blood. And as you watch them fade into exhausted silence, you realize the mines aren't just punishment. They're a erasure. Every man who enters becomes dust long before his body is buried. Rome doesn't remember their names. History doesn't carve their faces in marble. They are the invisible foundation of empire. If you thought the mines were the darkest Rome could offer, wait until you're dragged into the gladiators' barracks, where death isn't hidden underground, but paraded in front of roaring crowds hungry for blood. The first thing you notice isn't the sound. It isn't the men shouting, the clang of weapons, or the bark of orders. It's the smell, sweat, iron, and fear all mingled into one thick perfume that hits you in the face the moment you step through the gates of the ludus, the gladiator school. Imagine a locker room after a championship game, then add blood, broken bones, and the faint tang of despair. Welcome to training day in Rome's most brutal academy. The barracks are not luxurious. Forget the Hollywood image of heroic warriors lounging in marble halls. Picture long rows of wooden bunks crammed into dim quarters, straw mattresses that prick more than they comfort, and a single bucket in the corner that serves far too many men for far too little sanitation. The air is heavy, always heavy, like the very walls sweat along with the men. You hear chains clink as you walk through. Not everyone here is bound, but many are. Some gladiators are volunteers, free men hungry for glory, money, or the thrill of combat. But most are slaves, dragged here from conquered lands, condemned criminals, or those unlucky enough to catch the wrong eye at the wrong time. The volunteers walk with a different swagger, knowing they chose this fate. The slaves, their shoulders stoop, their eyes dart, but they move forward anyway. Choice is a luxury long sold at the market. Training begins at dawn, because of course it does. Wooden swords, heavy as lead, are thrust into calloused hands. The idea is simple. If you can master a blade that feels like swinging a tree trunk, you'll handle the real thing like a feather. The trainer, the Lannister, is not a patient man. He shouts, he curses, he strikes when he feels like it. His job isn't to teach kindness. His job is to mold men into killers worth the crowd's money. You watch as pairs of men square off, wooden swords cracking against wooden shields. Each strike rattles your bones. The Lannister stalks between them, correcting stances with blows from his stick, barking out Latin commands. Left foot forward! Shield high! Again? He doesn't care if your arm aches, if your legs tremble. He cares if the crowd in the Colosseum will cheer when you swing. And oh, the food. Here, at least, is one surprise. Gladiators are fed well. Better than most slaves, better even than some free citizens. Not because anyone cares about their health, but because fat cushions wounds. A thicker man bleeds slower, suffers longer, entertains more. Their diet is heavy on barley porridge, beans, bread, and the occasional treat of cheese or dried fruit. Meat is rare, despite the myths. Rome doesn't waste fine cuts of beef on men marked for slaughter. Instead, it fattens them like livestock on the cheap stuff. The men train until their muscles scream, until blisters break, until sweat runs in rivers down their backs. Then they train some more. Shield drills, sword drills, sparring matches that blur the line between practice and punishment. The climber is endless wood smacking wood, men grunting, trainers snarling. It's chaos, but beneath it, there's rhythm. The rhythm of survival. And here's the thing, as much as you want to pity them, part of you can't help but notice how alive they look in training. Muscles ripple, sweat gleams, eyes flash with something between terror and determination. These men live every moment like it might be their last, because it might. Compare that to your modern gym, where half the people scrolling through their phones between sets can barely be bothered to lift a dumbbell. At least the gladiators never forget leg day. In the evenings, the barracks echo with a different sound. Laughter. Jokes. The soft murmur of men who know tomorrow might be their last, so why not laugh tonight? Some carve dice from bones and gamble with whatever scraps they can muster. Others hum songs from faraway homelands, voices weaving through the dim light of oil lamps. A few sit in silence, staring at the walls, the weight of tomorrow pressing too hard on their chests. You hear whispers of upcoming games. Names are called, matchups arranged. A gladiator who has trained for months may finally be thrown into the arena. The veterans slap his back, some with encouragement, some with envy. To fight means a chance at glory, and at death. Neither is guaranteed, but both are promised. The Lannister moves among them like a general, reminding them of the stakes. Fight well, and the crowd loves you. Fight poorly, and the sand drinks you. He says it with the ease of a man commenting on the weather. Death is not a tragedy here, it's a statistic. Sometimes, the barracks host recruiters from noble houses, wealthy men and women looking to sponsor gladiators like racehorses. A chosen fighter might find himself with fine armor, a new name, even adoring fans. Others, they fight in obscurity, bodies tossed aside when broken. Fame, like life, is fickle in the arena. And then there are the scars. Every man here wears them, carved into skin like cruel tattoos. Some cross faces, some carve across backs. Some hide deep in the eyes. They tell stories of survival, of battles fought and lived through. In another world they'd be medals. Here, they're reminders of how close death always stands. Night falls, and the barracks quiets. Men shift restlessly on straw beds, dreams filled with sand, steel, and the roar of thousands. Somewhere a man prays, somewhere else another curses the gods. Sleep comes not as peace, but as a brief escape from the endless cycle of training, waiting, and fighting. And you lie there among them, the echoes of wooden swords still ringing in your ears. You can almost hear the Colosseum crowd already, roaring, chanting, hungry. Hungry for blood, for spectacle, for the illusion that death can be entertainment. Tomorrow the gates of the arena will open. Tomorrow the sand will be stained red. Tomorrow, you will hear what it feels like to step into the Colosseum itself, where tens of thousands watch, every heartbeat, and every breath, waiting to see whether you live or die. The gates creak open with a groan that sounds like the throat of some ancient beast. And the first thing that hits you is the light. After weeks of training in the dim barracks, the sun slams into your eyes like a physical blow, dazzling and merciless. The arena floor glitters with sand, golden in the morning rays, but don't be fooled. That sand has drunk more blood than any battlefield you can name. Every grain is a witness, every step a memory of screams. The sound follows next. A roar so vast it shakes your ribs, a wall of noise built from thousands of throats. The Colosseum holds nearly 50,000 people, and today it seems like every single one has shown up hungry. They stamp their feet, clap their hands, bellow names and insults alike. The crowd is a living thing, and you feel it in your bones. You are not just a man now, you are prey in a lion's cage. You squint at the vast sweep of the amphitheater, its tiers rising like a mountain of stone, white marble gleaming under the sky. Senators in their purple, edged togas sit in the best seats, their expressions cool, calculating. Nobles fan themselves lazily, jewelry catching the light, as if they were attending a play rather than a bloodletting. The common folk crowd the higher tiers, shouting themselves hoarse, their excitement unrestrained. And at the very top, almost lost in the shadows, the poor and slaves peer down, eager for distraction from their own misery. The emperor sits in his box, flanked by guards and advisors, the center of all eyes. His thumb, that single small gesture, holds more weight than the strongest sword. Life or death, mercy or doom. It all depends on how amused he feels today. Imagine your boss deciding whether you get to live, based on how entertaining your PowerPoint presentation was, and you'll have the right idea. The smell is thick, pungent, impossible to ignore. Sweat from thousands packed shoulder to shoulder. The tang of blood carried on the breeze. The musk of animals penned below. Lions and bears restless in their cages. And the smoke of roasting meat wafting from vendors in the stands. Because apparently nothing pairs better with watching men die than a nice skewer of grilled sausages. Humanity, as always, knows how to multitask. Trumpets blare, cutting through the noise, and the games begin. The first act is spectacle hunters battling wild beasts, brought from the far corners of the empire. A man armed with only a spear faces a lion, the sand shaking beneath its paws. The crowd gasps, then cheers as the spear finds its mark, but not before claws rake the hunter's arm. Blood sprays, the crowd erupts, and the beast collapses in a heap of golden fur. The hunter bows, triumphant, but his limp tells you the wound may fester. Victory today could mean death tomorrow. Then come the executions. Condemned criminals dressed in costumes to mock myths are thrown into the arena. One poor soul is tied to a stake as a bear lumbers out. The scene staged as though he were Orpheus failing to charm the underworld. The crowd howls with laughter as the bear swats him aside. You shift uncomfortably. The cruelty is wrapped in theatre, but the screams are real. Rome does not do subtlety when it comes to punishment. At last, the gladiators are summoned. Gates crash open, and men stride onto the sand in pairs, armor glinting, helmets shining. The roar crescendos. Names are shouted, chants rise. Some gladiators already have reputations, adored like modern sports stars. Women swoon. Men bet on outcomes. Children wave little wooden swords in imitation. You realize that for Rome, this isn't barbarism. It's entertainment, religion, politics, all blended into one intoxicating show. You step into the arena yourself now, the sand soft beneath your sandals, the weight of your shield heavy on your arm. Your opponent faces you across the space, helmet hiding his eyes, sword gleaming. The crowd quiets for a heartbeat, anticipation crackling. You hear your own breath loud in your ears, your heart hammering like a drum. Then, the signal. He charges. The clash of steel and shield rings out, sharp as lightning. You stagger back, block thrust forward. Every move is life or death, every mistake punished instantly. The crowd reacts to each blow as though they themselves are struck. Gasps, cheers, jeers. You sweat, you bleed. You fight not just an opponent, but the judgment of thousands. The fight stretches, time warping in the sand. Your arm burns, your legs shake, but adrenaline drives you on. Finally, your blade finds its mark, cutting deep. Your opponent crashes to the ground, shield slipping from his hand. He raises one arm in surrender, pleading for mercy. The arena holds its breath. All eyes turn to the emperor. His thumb hovers. The entire Colosseum silent as fate dangles on a gesture. You feel your chest tighten, the world narrowing to that small hand. Then, at last, the thumb tilts upward. The man lives. The crowd roars approval, their bloodlust sated for the moment. You wipe sweat from your brow, relief washing through you like cool water. You live another day. Perhaps tomorrow you'll die. Perhaps you'll win fame, even freedom. For now you bow, because survival demands it. The crowd cheers your name. Or at least the name they've given you, stripped of whatever you once were. As you leave the arena, the noise fading behind you. Your body trembles with exhaustion. Your ears still ring, your vision still dances with the glare of sun on sand. You've survived, but you know now, the Colosseum is no mere stage. It's a hungry mouth, always demanding more blood, more spectacle, more lives to feed its endless appetite. And if you think fighting in the sand is harrowing, wait until you're marched to the baths afterward, where luxury, gossip, and filth all collide in one steaming cauldron of Roman life. You shuffle through the streets, still aching from the Colosseum, bruises blooming on your arms, sand clinging to your skin like a second tunic. The crowd that roared for blood only hours ago now passes you in the street without a second glance. Rome is fickle like that. One moment you're the center of their universe, the next you're just another sweaty body in the afternoon sun. And where do all sweaty Romans go? To the baths, of course. Not the occasional hot shower like you might take at home, but the full-blown social event of the day. Think gym, spa, bar, and rumor mill rolled into one, except with a whole lot less clothing and a whole lot more steam. You push through the entrance of a sprawling thermocomplex, and instantly the world changes. The air grows heavy with heat and the tang of mineral water. Voices bounce off high-vaulted ceilings, laughter mixing with the splash of bodies plunging into pools. Mosaics gleam underfoot, intricate patterns of dolphins and tridents, every tile a whisper of wealth. Even the floor itself is warm, heated by furnaces below that never stop churning. First comes the apodyterium, the changing room. Slaves line the walls, ready to take cloaks, sandals, and jewelry. You strip down, handing your belongings over, trying not to look too nervous about the fact that theft is common, and your sandals may not be waiting for you later. Lockers don't exist, but at least your attendant glares, menacingly enough at passers-by to deter sticky fingers. Naked now, you join the flow of bodies moving into the tepidarium, the warm room. The air is thick, moist, carrying the herbal scent of oils and sweat. Marble benches line the walls, and men recline, chatting casually about politics, trade, or who embarrass themselves most spectacularly at the last banquet. The conversations float around you like gossiping ghosts. Senators discuss grain prices while merchants brag about their ships. Two men argue fiercely about chariot racing teams. Blues or greens, the eternal Roman rivalry. Imagine heated sports debates today, only with more body hair and fewer shirts. Your skin begins to glisten, pores opening, muscles softening, but this is only the warm-up. From here, you're herded toward the caldarium, the hot room. The moment you enter, it hits like a wall, a blast of heat and steam, so thick it makes your lungs stagger. Sweat explodes from your skin instantly, your vision fogs, your body feels both heavy and light. You sink onto a bench, marble slick beneath you, and breathe in the scalding air. Slaves move among the bathers, scraping skin with strigils, curved bronze tools that strip away sweat, oil, and grime. It's oddly satisfying, like peeling dried glue from your hand as a kid, only with the added thrill of wondering whether the slave missed a spot. Buckets of hot water are poured, steam hisses, voices rise. Someone nearby is telling a filthy joke, the punchline is drowned out by a burst of laughter. After enduring the heat until you feel half melted, you stumble out and head for the frigidarium, the cold plunge. The pool gleams like liquid glass, cold enough to snap the breath right out of your chest. You dip one toe in and instantly reconsider all your life choices. But the men around you laugh, slap your back, and shove you forward. You plunge. It's like being reborn in an icy river. Your body convulses, your heart leaps into your throat, and you come up gasping. Around you, others shriek, laugh, splash. The shock sears through your veins, and for a moment you feel sharper, clearer, more alive. The cold strips away the exhaustion of the arena, at least for now. And of course, there's food and drink. Vendors wander the baths with trays of olives, nuts, and mulled wine. Imagine sipping wine while dripping wet and sitting next to your senator, who's also dripping wet, both of you discussing tax reforms while a slave oils your back. This is Rome in a nutshell, dignity and absurdity in the same breath. The baths are more than cleansing. They are Rome's great equalizer. Rich and poor, noble and commoner, all come here to sweat, soak and gossip. Deals are struck in the caldarium, marriages arranged in the tepidarium, conspiracies whispered in corners of the frigidarium. If you want to know what Rome is really thinking, forget the Senate. Come here. The steam carries more secrets than marble halls ever could, and yet not all is glamorous. The water is rarely changed, floating with oils, hair, and the occasional mysterious object you'd rather not identify. Hygiene, as Rome defines it, is more about appearances than microbes. You tell yourself it's fine. Everyone's doing it, and besides, haven't you swum in a modern public pool? Let's not pretend those are sterile temples either. As the sun dips lower, the baths begin to empty. Men drift away, refreshed, gleaming, ready for evening banquets or the quiet of home. You linger a moment, feeling the weight of heat still in your bones, the cool sting of the plunge still on your skin. For a brief moment, you almost forget the chains of the market, the whip of the overseer, the roar of the Colosseum. Here in the steam, you are simply a body among bodies, a Roman among Romans. But the illusion fades as you step back into the street, the air cooler, the city buzzing with the onset of night. For slaves, there is no lingering freedom. Duties await. Masters expect attendance. And rumors whisper of another destination, one far less cleansing than the baths, where flesh is bought not for labor but for desire. If you thought the marketplace for work was cruel, wait until you walk into the brothels of Rome, where lust and power blur, and every candlelit room hides a story. The night air presses heavy on your skin as you leave the baths, the steam still clinging to your pores. Rome doesn't sleep, it simmers. Lanterns flicker against stone walls, casting long shadows down narrow streets. The smell of roasted chestnuts, smoke, and sewage weaves together, a perfume only the eternal city could pull off. You follow the crowd deeper into the city's veins, where laughter grows sharper, drunker, and coins clink in the dark. Ahead, painted walls beckon, covered with crude but colorful frescoes, men, women. Every combination you can imagine, and a few you wish you hadn't. No subtlety here. A Roman brothel doesn't advertise, it shouts. You duck beneath a low arch and step inside. The air changes immediately: musk, cheap perfume, sweat and oil. It hits your nose like a punch, yet it's oddly familiar, like walking into a tavern where everyone forgot their tunics. Oil lamps sputter, throwing golden light across walls plastered with erotic art. Little scenes, some playful, some acrobatic, like a menu painted in flesh. You glance too long at one mural, and suddenly wonder if it's physically possible. The Romans thought of everything. A madam approaches, draped in bright shawls, jangling bracelets on her arms. Her smile is businesslike, her eyes sharper than any senator's. She appraises you, then gestures toward a row of doorways, each draped with a curtain. Behind them, voices murmur, laughter rises, and the occasional grunt or cry leaks out. Privacy is optional. The women and men here are slaves, property rented out by the hour. Their faces wear painted smiles, but their eyes tell different stories: wariness, calculation, sometimes even defiance. They greet customers with rehearsed charm, leading them by the hand into shadowy chambers. For a few coins, Rome sells you the illusion of intimacy, the echo of affection. You hover, watching as the business unfolds. Coins clink into bowls at the entrance, the madam making careful notes on wax tablets. Everything is accounted for: who entered, how long, how much. The brothel runs like a miniature empire of its own, fueled by lust instead of grain. The rooms themselves are small, brick-walled cubicles, each with a low bed of straw, or, if you're lucky, a thin mattress. The walls are painted too, reminders of the menu in case anyone forgot why they came. The smell inside is a cocktail of oil, sweat, and damp linen. Some rooms echo with laughter, others with silence heavy enough to choke on. One girl, her hair oiled and braided, passes you by with a glance that lingers too long. Not flirtation, curiosity. You are not Roman, not entirely at home here, and she senses it. For a fleeting second, there's connection. Then it vanishes, swallowed by routine as she disappears behind a curtain with another man. Romans don't treat this as shameful. For them, it's ordinary, as common as a tavern visit or a stop at the baths. Husbands come, merchants come, soldiers fresh from the field come. Some even bring friends, laughing as if it's a group outing. Imagine today's office happy hour, except with fewer drinks and far more awkwardness. And yet, for the workers, life here is a trap. Some are born into slavery, some sold by desperate families, some captured in distant wars. Their bodies are coin purses, their youth their only currency. When beauty fades, so does value. The madam doesn't keep them for sentiment. In Rome, sentiment doesn't pay. Still, there are moments of humor even here. One man stumbles drunkenly through the curtain, trips over his own toga, and sprawls flat on the floor. The room erupts in laughter. Even the slaves laugh briefly, before covering their mouths. Another man emerges, chest puffed like a rooster, only to be met with the jeers of his friends about his record time. Rome, it seems, spares no one from ridicule. The night deepens. Candles burn low, shadows creep further. The brothel hums with the rhythm of its own little world, a place where power and vulnerability blur together. You stand at the threshold, watching, listening, absorbing. The air clings to you. The smell will follow you long after you leave, as if reminding you of the transactions carved into these walls. And as you step back out into the cool night, the sounds of Rome still swirling, you realize the city itself is one vast brothel, always selling, always buying, always hungry. Here everything has a price: grain, honor, flesh, even silence. If you thought the brothel revealed Rome's darkest secrets, wait until you step into the kitchens of the empire, where delicacies turn into disgust, and the banquet table hides horrors as well as pleasures. The city greets you again as you step from the shadows of the brothel. Rome never pauses, only shifts gears. Where the brothel sold lust, the streets now whisper of feasts, kitchens glowing with firelight, slaves carrying baskets heavy with exotic ingredients. The smell of roasting meats, honey, and spilled wine snakes down alleyways. Tonight, Rome dines like a god, or at least tries to. You're ushered toward a domus, the house of a wealthy patron. And from the threshold it's clear you're entering a performance, not just a meal. Marble floors gleam, torches flicker. Frescoes on the walls show gods reclining at their own eternal banquets. The host greets you with outstretched arms, cheeks flushed with anticipation. He doesn't just want to feed you. He wants to dazzle you, overwhelm you, prove that his wealth could outshine the moon, if only it tried harder. Slaves glide around, taking cloaks, guiding guests into the triclinium, the dining room. 3 couches line the room in a U shape, with low tables in the center. You recline as expected, propped on one elbow, feet stretched behind you. It feels odd at first, eating while sprawled like you're posing for a marble statue. But this is how Romans do it. Forks. Never heard of them. It's fingers, spoons, and the occasional toothpick, like tool for you tonight. The first course arrives. Salads. And freshly baked bread still warm from the oven. Bowls of honey glisten, waiting for you to dip. The bread crunches under your teeth, steam escaping in fragrant bursts. For a moment it feels wholesome, almost familiar. But don't get comfortable. Romans consider this the warm-up, like stretching before a marathon. The wine flows already, mixed with water in great bowls, ladled into cups by careful hands. Too strong, and the evening ends too soon. Too weak, and no one loosens their tongue. The right balance keeps everyone floating just above reason. Perfect for gossip, debate, and spontaneous poetry competitions. One senator begins reciting verses about his neighbor's bald head. The room erupts in laughter. You sip your watered wine and wonder how many drunken poems you've written in texts at 2 a.m. The Romans just happen to have an audience. Then the true show begins. Dishes parade in with theatrical flair: dormouse stuffed with minced pork and pine nuts, sprinkled with honey. Yes, dormouse, small, plump, roasted to golden brown. The guest beside you pops one hole into his mouth, crunching happily. You hesitate. Is this a pet or a snack? In Rome, it's both. Fish sauces follow, sharp and pungent. Garum, the empire's favorite condiment, is poured generously on everything, its fermented tang filling the air. Imagine ketchup if it were made of anchovies left to stew under the Mediterranean sun for months. Delicious, they insist. Your nose disagrees. Then peacocks, roasted with feathers reattached for spectacle. Platters of sausages spiced with herbs. A whole boar's head, tusks polished, eyes glazed with honey. Slaves carve slices with quick precision, piling plates high. You glance at your fellow diners, already greasy with juices, wiping mouths on the backs of their hands, laughing with open mouths full of meat. Table manners here mean showing enthusiasm, not elegance. The pace quickens. A tray of flamingo tongues is offered, prized for their rarity. You take one chew, and realize delicacy often means expensive and weird. Across the room, a guest loudly praises the crispiness of fried sozadas. You smile weakly, wondering how you'll ever look milk in the eye again. Between courses, slaves bring basins of perfumed water to rinse hands. Another slave offers a strigil, scraping oil and sweat from your skin mid-banquet. Yes, you're oiled and scraped between mouthfuls of pork. Hygiene, Roman style. If you've ever paused Netflix halfway through dinner to wipe down your phone, you'd fit right in. And then the excess peaks. A whole roast crane is carried in, wings spread as if in flight, skin gleaming under oil. Gasps ripple through the room. The host beams, swelling with pride. He whispers loudly enough for everyone to hear: imported, rare, no expense spared. This isn't food anymore. It's theater, edible wealth on display. Not everyone keeps pace. Some guests excuse themselves discreetly, heading to a side room with a feather down their throat to make room for more. Yes, the infamous Roman vomitorium myth has roots here. It wasn't the architecture, it was the practice. Overindulgence so literal you'd purge just to keep eating. You shift uncomfortably, clutching your stomach, and vow never to complain about Thanksgiving again. Through it all, the conversation spins. Politics, gossip, philosophy. One man declares stoicism makes him immune to desire, then promptly chases a plate of honey cakes like his life depends on it. Another argues the empire's future while spilling wine down his chest. The room swirls with laughter, debate, belching, and the clatter of dishes. By the time the final course arrives, sweet dates stuffed with nuts, pastries dripping with honey, and fruits imported from Africa, your body feels stretched beyond reason. You're more food than flesh. Guests groan and recline deeper into couches, loosening belts, sighing contentedly. The air is thick with smoke, spice, and the faint tang of sweat. The banquet winds down with music. A lyre is plucked. Flutes whistle, dancers spin in gauzy garments, shadows flickering against the frescoed walls. Some guests nod off, others lean into whispered conversations. The host, triumphant, surveys the carnage of empty platters and wine stains like a general after battle. And you, still reclined, feel both dazzled and queasy. The banquet is Rome distilled indulgence, spectacle, and a little too much of everything. You leave with the taste of honey still clinging to your tongue, your stomach rebelling but your mind buzzing. Outside, the night air feels sharp and clean. The laughter of the triclinium echoes faintly as you walk away, belly-heavy thoughts heavier. Because tomorrow brings another Roman institution, one less gilded, more gritty. The streets themselves, where banquets end and real hunger begins. If you thought excess was unsettling, wait until you smell the alleys of Rome, where sewage, sweat, and survival create a stench you'll never forget. The morning after the banquet arrives with a thud. In your skull, in your stomach, in your bones. Wine still lingers on your tongue. Sticky honey clings to your teeth. And your body feels like it's been trampled by a legion of elephants. You stagger into daylight, blinking against the Roman sun, only to be greeted by the most honest reminder that this city is not all marble and mosaics. The streets hit you in the face like a slap, loud, crowded, and alive with smells that can raise the dead. Narrow alleyways funnel noise like trumpets. Hawkers shout their wares, figs, garum, fresh bread. The clatter of hooves beats against stone, wheels screech on uneven paving. The crowd is a river, pushing and pulling, a chaos of tunics, cloaks, and sandals. Your first challenge is simply not being flattened by an ox cart barreling past. The driver screaming curses inventive enough to peel paint. The smell is something else. Sewage runs in gutters, mixing with discarded food scraps, dung from animals and the sour tang of humanity. Public latrines overflow. Fish rots in baskets left too long in the sun. Perfumes drift from wealthier homes, struggling like gladiators to defeat the stench, but always losing. You try breathing through your mouth, but that only adds flavor to the air. Congratulations, you've just tasted Rome. Children dart between legs, chasing each other, laughing as they dodge carts. Beggars line walls, hands outstretched, voices rasping with hunger. Slaves scurry with loads strapped to their backs. Amphorae of wine, sacks of grain, baskets of olives. A soldier shoves past, his armor clinking, face set in stone. The street is survival. Blink too long, and you'll lose your coin purse, your sandals, maybe even your place in the flow of bodies. At one corner, a man sells hot bread from a portable oven, steam rising into the morning air. People gather eagerly, trading coins for crusty loaves. The smell is heavenly, cutting through the sewage like sunlight through fog. You grab one, biting into the crisp shell, the warm dough inside soft as clouds. For a moment bliss, and then a cart rolls through a nearby puddle, splattering muck onto your toga. Rome giveth, Rome taketh away. Public fountains stand at intersections, spouting water from carved lion heads. People gather, filling jugs, splashing faces. The water is surprisingly clean, fed by the aqueducts. Rome's pride. You cup your hands, drink greedily, and nearly forget the open sewer 10 steps away. That's the Roman paradox: genius plumbing and terrible sanitation living side by side. Like having the newest smartphone, but never remembering to charge it. Street performers gather small crowds. Jugglers tossing knives, musicians strumming lyres, acrobats bending in ways that make your back ache in sympathy. Coins jingle in bowls as spectators clap. Pickpockets hover at the edges, eyes sharp, hands quicker than a striking snake. One man accidentally, bumps into you. You clutch your coin pouch tight and glare. He winks, vanishing into the crowd like smoke. Graffiti covers walls, scratched into plaster insults, poems, political slogans, crude jokes. One reads, "Lucius owes me 2 denarii." Another, "Marcus loves Julia." Below it, a reply. "Julia does not love Marcus." Rome's Twitter feed, alive in stone. You chuckle, realizing nothing has changed. People always needed a wall to complain on. And then there are the markets. Endless stalls grown under figs, dates, pomegranates, cheeses, and fish still flapping weakly. Spices perfume the air with hints of cinnamon and pepper, rare treasures from the edges of the empire. Buyers haggle fiercely, voices rising, arms waving. A woman slaps a fishmonger with a mackerel for trying to cheat her on weight. The crowd roars with laughter. You slip between stalls, dazzled, overwhelmed, assaulted by colors and smells. But beneath the bustle there's menace. At another corner, a group of toughs loiter, eyes scanning for weakness. They lean against walls, daggers at their belts, grins too sharp. Rome's underbelly lurks in daylight, and the streets are their hunting ground. You keep walking, head down, blending into the flow. As the sun climbs higher, the heat intensifies. The stones underfoot radiate warmth, sweat beads on your brow. The smells grow heavier, the crowd louder, the city more relentless. By midday, you feel wrung out, as if the streets themselves have sucked you dry. And yet, for all the grime and chaos, there's energy here you can't ignore. The streets of Rome are veins pulsing with life, every corner a story, every turn a risk. To walk them is to feel the empire in its rawest form, unpolished, unsanitized, utterly human. But if you think the streets are rough, wait until you step into the final test, the night in a Roman insula. A tenement where the poor live stacked on top of each other like clay jars, walls thin, tempers thinner, and fire always one spark away. You've survived the market, the arena, the baths, the brothel, the banquet, and the filthy arteries of Rome. Now comes the place where it all ends at night, the place where half the city laves crammed into walls of brick and wood that creak with every gust of wind. The insula. Think of it as the Roman apartment block, except with fewer fire codes, less plumbing, and a much higher chance of the whole thing collapsing while you sleep. From the street, the insula towers above you, 6, sometimes even 7 stories tall. Its walls lean just slightly, as though the building itself is tired. Wooden balconies jut out like ribs, patched with planks, laundry dangling like flags of surrender. The smell rising from the alley is a stew of cooking smoke, damp timber, unwashed bodies, and the sharp tang of urine from chamber pots, emptied into the gutter. You crane your neck upward and wonder, with more than a little dread, which floor you'll be calling home tonight. Inside, the stairway groans under your weight. It's dark, lit only by the occasional flicker of a torch mounted crookedly to the wall. The steps are steep, uneven, and worn slick by decades of sandals. The air grows closer as you climb, carrying the sense of whatever is cooking. Lentils on one floor, fish stew on another, bread singed almost black below. Somewhere above, a baby cries, the sound muffled by thin walls. The building feels alive, breathing with the heat, the voices, the press of bodies. The first floor apartments, the most expensive, actually resemble proper homes. Doors open onto tidy rooms with mosaics, real furniture, and sometimes even their own water supply. You glance inside one briefly. A merchant sits at a small table, counting coins, his wife weaving at a loom, their slave quietly stoking a brazier. It's almost peaceful, respectable even. But as you climb, the walls begin to peel back the truth. By the 3rd floor, the rooms shrink, the walls thin. You pass a door left ajar, a family of 5 huddles inside, pots bubbling over a smoky brazier, beds nothing more than straw mats. The mother stirs stew while shouting at 2 children to stop bickering over a cracked jug. The father dozes in the corner, exhaustion carved into his face. They glance at you wary before the door swings shut again. Privacy is scarce, suspicion plentiful. By the 5th floor, things are downright grim. The walls are bare plaster, cracked and patched with whatever materials were on hand. Ceilings slope low, floors creak underfoot. The rooms up here often house entire families in a single chamber. Cooking, eating, sleeping, all in the same space. Smoke gathers thick in the air, staining walls black. Rats scurry across beams overhead. You wonder if the floor beneath you will hold, or if you'll suddenly be the proud owner of a hole straight into your neighbor's stew. Food is simple here. Lentils, bread, cabbage. Maybe a sliver of salted fish if fortune smiles. Pots bubble in cramped hearths, filling the hallway with scents that are equal parts comforting and cloying. Neighbors argue about whose smoke is choking the stairwell, voices carrying through the thin plaster. Somewhere nearby, a couple fights bitterly, their words sharp enough to cut, then fade into silence. Life here is lived loudly, because there is no choice. Every sound bleeds through the walls. At night, the insula truly comes alive. Oil lamps flicker in doorways, children chase each other through halls, dogs bark, lovers quarrel. From one room comes the twang of a lyre, a man singing off key. From another, the unmistakable groans of a couple trying very hard to pretend their walls are thicker than they are. You lie on your straw mat, staring at the beams above, realizing sleep in an insula is less about silence and more about exhaustion overpowering noise. And always there is the threat of fire. The walls are timber. The stairways narrow, the lamps precarious. One overturned brazier, one careless spark, and the whole building could become a torch in minutes. You hear stories whispered of entire blocks reduced to ash, tenants trapped in upper floors with nowhere to flee. Tonight, as you try to sleep, the thought scratches at the back of your mind. Every creak of wood, every hiss of smoke, feels like the start of disaster. Still, there are moments of warmth. Neighbors share food when they can, lending bread or oil to those who've run short. Children band together in play, darting through the halls with laughter that drowns out despair. In a corner room, an old woman tells stories to a small circle of children, her voice weaving myths of gods and heroes. Even here, among cracked walls and leaking roofs, Rome's spirit hums quietly, weary but unbroken. The dawn brings little relief. You wake with stiff limbs, body aching from straw and smoke, throat dry from breathing in dust all night. Downstairs, chamber pots are emptied again, splashing into gutters, adding new layers to the city's perfume. Slaves hurry off to market, merchants set up stalls, beggars find their corners. The insula exhales its people into the streets, like a hive buzzing to life with the sun. You stand in the doorway, watching it all unfold, realizing you've felt Rome from its highest marble halls to its lowest wooden rafters. You've been bought, sold, bathed, fed, mocked, and crammed into the very bones of the empire. And now, standing in the filth of the gutter, you understand this city isn't just monuments and emperors. It's sweat, noise, hunger, laughter, and survival stacked on top of each other like the floors of this insula. The insula looms behind you as you step out, its walls already leaning, its beams already tired. One day it will fall, as all things do. But for now it stands, cradling the lives of hundreds within its fragile ribs. And you, weary, wiser, smelling faintly of smoke and cabbage, step back into the streets, carrying the echoes of Rome's most ordinary and most extraordinary home. If you thought chains and auctions were the harshest part of the Roman slave market, now you know the truth. The city itself was always the final master, and it never truly let anyone go.